Hi guys, I'm Ivory and today I'm going to be doing a 2-day wear test on the Tarte C Hydroflex Serum Foundation. Before I begin, I do want to clarify that a 2-day wear test does not mean that I wear this for 48 hours straight. It just means that I wear this on 2 separate days and each day I wear it for about 10 hours. For anyone that's new, I have oily and acne prone skin, so a lot of my wear tests are catered towards people with similar skin types. So if you find that this review is helpful, I will link up in the cards a playlist of all the other foundations I've done a review on. I'm also really excited to say that today's video is in collaboration with Tara Lynn. For all the people that say that my reviews are thorough and in-depth, I feel like it's amateur when you compare it to Tara's video. They are so thorough, and she's also extremely kind. She currently describes her skin as normal, but I know in the past she has struggled with having dry skin as well, so I'm just gonna say that she has dry to normal skin. She also caters a lot of her reviews to mature skin, although when you look at her, does it even look mature? No, I don't think so. I mean, let's face it, it looks better than mine. As far as foundation shade, I have watched enough of her reviews to know that she is usually about 1 to 3 shades darker than me, but we are always picking the same undertone. I usually pick something in the warm, golden, olive category, and she does similarly. If you use me as a shade reference, I think that might be important to know. But she is so consistent, so fast on her reviews. I highly recommend that you subscribe to her. So after you watch this video, be sure to watch hers. I will link it as well as all of her social media in my description box below. So before I add the foundation, I am going to apply primer to half my face. I'm going to apply it to this side. The last time I did it on this side, so I like to alternate for each wear test. The primer I'm using is the Hourglass Mineral Veil. Even though I just have the sample bottle, even the sample bottle I feel like was really expensive. And a little bit goes a long way. And then on either side of my face, I'm going to be using a brush and a sponge just to see how the foundation applies with two very common applicators. The brush that I'm using is the Sigma F47, the multitasker. And then the sponge that I'm using is actually a microfiber sponge from Shot Missé. It is no secret to anyone that I am a huge fan of microfiber sponges. I think they're way better than any other sponges. You use so much less product and you get way more coverage when you use the sponge. I will link both of these applicators in my description box below. The foundation is a medium coverage. The Hydroflex technology helps even skin tone and blur the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and pores. It has hyaluronic acid, plant collagen, vitamin E, and niacinamide hydrate. The product contains 1.01 ounces and retails for $39. All right, so this is one layer of the foundation. First of all, the back says shake well, so just remember to do that, but you can hear it. It's very liquidy. And usually when a foundation is like that, it feels super lightweight, which it does. Also, the shade I got was 42 and neutral, and damn, this is a really good match on me. You know, it's always a gamble whenever you get a foundation shade online, but this is pretty damn near perfect. But you can see that my acne is still peeking through. I still see the redness, but the rest of my face, it kind of just matched it with my neck, because you guys know that my neck is a couple of shades darker than my face. But if you are someone that only does one layer of foundation, right now I would say that this is quite sheer. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a second layer to see how this builds up. All right, so this is the second layer. I really only focused it on my cheeks because right here is where most of my redness resides, and a little bit down here as well, but mostly right here is the most noticeable. It continued to cancel out the redness, but not completely. It says it's a medium coverage. I would say it's more of a light medium coverage, especially if you have acne or hyperpigmentation. But if you have more clear skin, obviously this is gonna give you a little bit more coverage because you're basically covering up perfection, because you guys are lucky sons of bitches. So if you have clear skin, like right here, my forehead is completely clear, I would say it's a solid medium. But everywhere else that I have acne and hyperpigmentation, I would say it's more of a light medium coverage. I also wanted to show you right here where my skin is a little bit drier because of the acne that is scabbing. You can see that the foundation, it does look a little bit drier here, but it's not too bad. You know, sometimes when I add these foundations, it looks like real crunchy, but this one looks like it's masking the dryness fairly well. But I do see that it's laying just a little bit different on the dry area versus the areas that there is no dry patches. So that is just something to take note of. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward doing the rest of my makeup. As always, all the products that I'm using will be listed in my description box below. So I went ahead and did the rest of my makeup. I did want to apply that. I only added blue setting powder only to the center of my face because that is where I get the oiliest. And then the rest of my face, I use powder products. So I don't have to go in with both setting powder and then blush because the blush is already a powder. So adding the powder blush on top of my foundation is already kind of lightly setting it. So by doing that, there are some areas that are completely set. There are some areas that are lightly set, such as my cheeks and my forehead because I added bronzer there. And then right below my cheeks, like right here by the jawline, is completely unset. That is how I've been doing my makeup for a while now, and it's been working really great for me. For the most part, everything looks really good. I'm actually really feeling my look today. You can still see down here that it looks just a little bit drier than the rest of my face. A lot of the times after a while, when my oils come in, that goes away, so I'm really not worried about it right now, and it's really not even that bad. I just see a little bit of flakiness. In terms of severity, I'd probably give it like a 2. That is it for this check-in. I will see you in a couple hours. All right, it's a little over the 5-hour mark. I am quite shiny and it's not too bad, but it's starting to get just a little bit uncomfortable, so I would like to blot in a little bit to reduce some of these oils because it's just starting to feel a little bit heavy. As far as primer versus no primer, I think it's still too early to tell. The areas where there's a little bit of wear, it's equal on both sides. I don't really see any significant differences as of yet. On this side, you can see right here in this area, there's a little bit of cracking happening. This is the non-primer side, but it's also happening a little bit here as well. So it seems to be pretty equal in terms of cracking. As a whole though, I feel like my chin is holding on together pretty well. My upper lip is looking pretty good. There's no missing holes of foundation, which you guys know is a very big pet peeve of mine. My cheeks, albeit shiny, they still are holding on together pretty well. My nose, on either side, I do see like right here in the crevice, there's a little bit of missing foundation on both sides. It's not super noticeable, but it feels like it's holding on for dear life. And then my forehead, my T-zone is looking pretty good. It's not really settling into my fine lines up here. It did settle just ever so slightly right here in my smile line. Not a big deal. You know what? I'm just gonna buff that out right now. Overall, apart from the fact that I'm just a little bit shinier than I would like, it's holding on together pretty well. I'm gonna go ahead and blot. I will link my favorite blotting sheets in the description box. Okay, so I went ahead and I blotted and I feel so much better. This actually did really well with blotting. I thought I would lose a noticeable amount of coverage, especially on my nose because it was so shiny, but I didn't. It looks pretty much the same as it did when I first applied my makeup. And I really didn't lose any coverage anywhere else. It just looks more or less the same and it's just refreshed. My T-zone, I would say, is looking really good. So I'm really happy to know that this foundation does really well with blotting and I'm not gonna have missing patches of foundation here and there. And now I feel good as new. But this is what the foundation is looking like in natural lighting after about 5 hours. All right, it is the 10-hour mark and I think oil wise, it really doesn't look too bad. As far as having primer versus no primer, I don't see a difference, at least not any noticeable difference. So I think you're good with or without it. Some areas that I'm a little bit concerned about right here, since the very beginning of this day, it's the driest area of my face. And since the halfway point, it seems to have gotten worse. I can tell that the foundation is picking up on the dry patches, kind of weird. The whole area looks flaky to me, but I think the good thing is that because this is a light medium coverage on me and the color match is so good, you can't really see it. So it is happening, but you would have to be pretty up close to see it. But at the same time, it is happening, but it just so happens that it's camouflaged really well because I got a really good shade match. My upper lip and my chin area, definitely some wear and tear. I can see it's starting to crack a little bit, but I think if I just pat it out a little bit, it'll kind of fix that. I don't know if that was the right move. Either way, it's the end of the day. That rhymed. So the fact that it is cracking a little bit isn't a big deal considering we're 10 hours in. The cheeks look perfect. I have no complaints whatsoever. It didn't settle at all into my forehead wrinkle. And at the 5-hour mark, it did settle a little bit into my smile line, but it looked like it kind of went away. Or maybe I just buffed it and I forgot I buffed it out. Either way, as a whole, I think this looks really good. The only things I'm concerned about are the fact that it's clinging on to my dry skin, making it look extra dry, and it's cracking right here in the mouth area. But it's happening quite late in the day, so I'm not too worried about that, but I just wanted to make note of that because this is a foundation review, so duh. So what I've learned is that primer really doesn't make a difference with this foundation. Oh my god, I didn't even take note to see if the sponge or the brush gave me better coverage. How did I forget that again? I feel like this is the second time I've done it this month. I'm so sorry, I dropped the ball again. Luckily, I'll be editing day 1 before I do day 2. So I'll look back at the footage and I'll know by day 2 which one was a better applicator. As far as my thoughts on this foundation, I always leave my final thoughts at the end of the video so that nothing seems redundant. And also, I have have changed my mind on day 1 and day 2, so I don't want to give an opinion now and then have to say, just kidding, on day 2, you know? But that is it for day 1. Good night. All right, it is day 2. I have already moisturized and we are skipping primer today. I am, however, going to add loose setting powder underneath my foundation. This is a great oily skin hack to help prolong your oils from coming through. It also can help the foundation stay together better. Of course, that also depends on the type of foundation that you use. But a lot of times, if I'm having an issue with my oils coming through too fast or the foundation is breaking up too soon, I will at least try putting loose setting powder underneath to see if that makes a difference. My favorite one to use is the Dermablend loose setting powder. So what I do is I get a puff. This one is by Tati Beauty, and I apply this to the areas that I get oiliest. I'm gonna skip my chin because I've noticed that even though I do get oily there and it breaks up, when I put powder there, because my skin around this area is questionable, it's a little bit dry, the powder will make it extra dry, and sometimes the foundations just don't lay nice. So I'm just gonna avoid the chin area, but I am gonna go in within my T-zone and my nose and my upper lip. Back in the day when I was first playing around with makeup, I would powder my entire face though. Nowadays, I've definitely experimented enough with my makeup to realize that I don't need to add that much powder. The center of my face is really all that I need. And then I'm gonna go in with the foundation. I am gonna go in with a microfiber sponge. Looking back at the footage, it didn't seem like there was a big difference between a brush and a sponge, but I am used to using a sponge, so I'm just gonna use what I know best. I'm gonna do the same thing that I did on day 1. I'm just gonna squeeze a couple drops. All right, so this is one layer of the foundation. I am gonna add a second layer only to the cheeks because you can see some of my skin is still peeking through, and I would just like a little bit more coverage there. A little tip that I do, I don't talk about it too much, but I have mentioned it before. In between each layer, I wait about 2 to 4 minutes. That way the first layer completely sinks into the skin. A lot of the times I've noticed that if I go in with a second layer too fast, the first layer hasn't dried down yet, so I'm still moving around parts of the first layer, so I don't get the coverage that I want because it's still wet. I think of it as when you do your nails and you apply the first coat, you have to wait for that to dry before you add the second coat for full opacity. So having a couple minutes of dry down time is really helpful for me so that I can get things to be more full coverage without using any more additional product necessary. But I'm gonna apply my second layer now. All right, this is it. 2 layers is my max. From what I can see, adding powder underneath didn't ruin the foundation application at all. Still looks nice and smooth, so no complaints here. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward again, doing the rest of my makeup. All the products that I use are the same that I used on day 1. All right, we are 6 hours in. Oil-wise, I don't feel like I look too greasy. I definitely look a little bit dewy, shiny, but definitely not greasy. And as far as having the powder underneath the foundation, I can't really tell if that's helping right now. I'll probably be able to see if it makes a difference more so at the 10-hour mark. But for right now, I feel like it looks good. My cheek area looks pretty good. No coverage has been lost there at all. My nose, the sides of it look a little bit oily, but it's all staying together pretty well. The T-zone, it looks just a tiny bit dry and it's kind of clinging to it just a little bit oddly. And then down here on my chin, I am starting to see it crack a little bit, but I'm a little bit more forgiving just because the coverage of this is not super full. So the fact that you can see my skin peeking through, it does help disguise the parts that are having a little bit of wear and tear. It's less noticeable. So I do see that it's sort of happening, but as long as you get a good shade match for yourself, it really isn't bad. And you can see right here in my smile line that it's starting to settle ever so slightly in there as well. I'm gonna go ahead and blot again because I am a little bit shinier than I would like, and I normally would blot around the halfway point anyways during the day. All right, so I blotted, and for the most part, I feel like everything looks pretty good. You can see, however, on the sides of my nostril that I did lose a little bit of coverage. You can see my skin peeking through. Everywhere else, though, looks good. I don't see any issues. So far, at the 6-hour mark, it's holding on pretty well. All right, it is 10 hours later. I went back on the footage on day 1, and all the small concerns that I had, they seem to still hold true today. So I don't really feel like powdering made too much of a difference today, but that's just a good thing to know, and that's just my personal experience. So I always encourage that whenever you get a new foundation, try it at least 3 times, trying different things to see what you can do to get it to wear it the longest and the best on you. Overall, I feel like the foundation wore really well. My nose at the top of it is looking pretty smooth. You can see at the nostrils, it's pretty oily right here. In the crevices of my nose, it's like borderline greasy to me. My forehead, for the most part, is looking pretty good. I can see that it settled just ever so slightly right here in my forehead wrinkle, and around my mouth area I'm starting to see the cracking and the separating, which I'm pretty sure happened on the first day. So it seems as though whatever technique I do, it'll wear more or less the same on me. And even though I do see that on my upper lip and the mouth area that it is breaking down, I am keeping in mind that this is the 10-hour mark, so it is the end of the day. And like I said before, because the coverage isn't full on me, having my skin already initially peeking through kind of helps disguise it. So I'm not as annoyed with this as I normally would with a more fuller coverage foundation where you can really see just how much something is breaking down. This one is definitely less obvious to me. I left my blotting sheets upstairs, but I do want to blot again just because being this oily kind of drives me nuts. So overall, I really like this foundation. I wouldn't say I love it. I'll explain in a second, but overall, I really like this. I would give this like an 8.7 out of 10. The things I liked about it is because it's so liquidy, it is quite lightweight. Based on my experience, I think that this is oily skin friendly and it is pretty acne skin friendly. Reason being is because my acne down here, because it is drier, on the first day I remember it clung onto it kind of weird. It wasn't that bad, but I did notice compared to the rest of my face, the foundation just laid differently in this area where my acne is than the rest of my face. And I do have foundations where even though I have dry skin, when I put it on, it doesn't look like I have dry skin. For example, where is it? Do I have it down here? I don't, of course not. The Essence Pretty Natural Hydrating Foundation. Oh my God, I freaking love that foundation. Every single time I have like dry, flaky skin, as soon as I put that foundation on top, you won't even know. So that's just an example. From what I can see, the foundation does pretty well with touch-ups. You might have a couple missing patches here and there, but they're not super significant. And especially since we're in the middle of a panorama, no one should be that close to you anyways. The things I don't like about this foundation, out of my entire face, the mouth region wore the worst by the end of the day. I do see areas, especially on my chin, where there's some areas of foundation missing, where there's just a little bit of cracking. And like I just said, I don't know how this would work on people with dry skin in the sense that they have like flaky skin. Because when I applied it over here, the skin wasn't super flaky, but it was a little bit flaky and it clung on to that. So if you have more severe or more flaky skin than I have, I would just be cautious. This foundation reminds me of a couple things. The first one I'm thinking about is the Maybelline Urban Dream Cover, I believe is what it's called. It's super liquidy. It has the sunscreen in it. It wore very similarly to this and it had the same type of coverage and finish, but this one lasts longer than the Maybelline one. And this also kind of reminds me of the Fenty Ease Drops. That one's also very liquidy, sheer medium coverage. And I thought that one was okay, but this one's better. If you had bad luck with either of those, I would try this one because to me, this is a better version of both of those. So I do recommend this foundation. I do really like it. I think the only thing that I was iffy about was the breaking up around my mouth. But like I said, because there isn't much coverage to begin with, it's not super noticeable. So it's really not that big of a deal. That is it for this review. I hope that it was helpful, insightful, or at least entertaining. And if it was, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and feel free to comment down below what other types of videos you'd like to see from me. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I would love to see you come back. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next one.